Today we are talking about the insane YBIT, the YieldMax Bitcoin Option Income Strategy ETF. That is definitely a mouthful, with a distribution rate of 95%. Yes, 95. Absolutely insane. Now, this fund is new, so this distribution rate may fall a little bit, but what we're going to do, we're going to run a calculation off the distribution so far and get a rough estimate on what it would be for the year. And then we're going to check out the dividend history, see what it's been paying out. I should say distribution history, see what it has been paying out so far. And then we are also going to do a calculation to see if it holds this distribution rate and the price appreciation remains constant. We are going to see how much money you would make over 10, 20, 30 years if you reinvested the dividends from this fund over time using a dividend reinvestment calculator. So if you are interested in this kind of content on the channel, I talk about stocks, ETFs, primarily dividends, but all types of investing and things that I find interesting. So if you like that kind of stuff, let me know by liking the video and hitting subscribe. And if not, I'm still glad that you guys are here. We're going to jump straight into it and look at YBIT's price. So this YieldMax fund has not had the best start. It's down 25% in the first 6 months of its trading. Now, part of that is because we've seen a lot of these funds tank pretty heavily. It dropped 13% after the last dividend was paid, which we see pretty consistently with these funds. Now, what's important to note is the market is in a bit of a downturn right now. These last month, month and a half, maybe even 2 months have been rough. And so Bitcoin is down, which we would see this drop with the fall of Bitcoin as well, because it does track it slightly. But it is really important to note that even though this one is down, doesn't mean this fund isn't as good as some of the other ones. It just means that it started trading at a definite harder time in the market than what we've seen with like the CONY fund. Over the last 6 months, we've watched Bitcoin go all over the place. It is up 40% over the last 6 months, which I think is crazy and not the best sign for YBIT. It should be doing well if Bitcoin is doing well, but that also comes down to the volatility of those option strategies. Now, the interesting thing is Bitcoin has fallen about 13.5% over the past couple weeks, and it's looking like it's testing this low of what, 59,000, maybe 55,000 over here. So could be a decent time for Bitcoin, and if that's the case, I imagine YBIT would track it. But you never really know. Sometimes the market drops and we could see a farther fall for Bitcoin, especially with how people are really, really afraid of the market right now. So a lot of news is coming out about Bitcoin just because it is retesting this low to mid 50s area. I'm curious to see how it turns out, but I want to note the differences between YBIT and other YieldMax ETFs. So we're going to jump back to their website. So on YBIT's portion of the website for YieldMax, we're going to scroll down and we can see some of the differences, mainly the fund overview. The objectives are all pretty similar. We can see the fund's primary investment objective is to seek current income, and secondary investment objective is to seek exposure to the share price of the Bitcoin ETPs that are subject to a limit on potential investment gains, as we've seen. So you do have some risk with this compared to just holding Bitcoin. But what's different is instead of just holding, let's say holding Bitcoin, they own these they purchase these ETPs that hold physical or spot Bitcoin over such ETPs that reference Bitcoin indirectly via futures contracts. So that is something to note. It's a little bit interesting. You kind of have another middleman, which isn't necessarily bad, but it is just different than what we've seen with some of the other funds that just you're instead of buying the actual ETF, you're buying the YieldMax fund version. Whereas this, you have to buy an ETF that is the Bitcoin version, because of course Bitcoin is not traded on the stock market. So it is interesting. YBIT seeks to generate current income via a synthetic covered call strategy on one or more select US-listed Bitcoin ETPs. YBIT is actively managed by Zega Financial, which is very, very interesting. I'm not sure if you know of any other YieldMax funds that are managed by Zega. That doesn't ring a bell to me. I wonder if that's one specific they're doing for this one because it is trading on these ETPs, but I'm not sure. So the net asset, 62 million, which is, I mean, kind of run of the mill with what we've seen for the YieldMax fund, smaller than some, larger than others. This one I think would probably follow closest to Coinbase, CONY, their fund, and they have similar distribution rates, which is absolutely insane. So far it looks relatively promising. That the idea behind it is very, very interesting. Higher expense ratio, we've seen this over and over again with the YieldMax funds of 0.99%. Larger premium discount currently of 0.35%, which is good. That's higher than we've seen recently. So definitely want to look at what we're going to do now. We're going to look at the distribution history and see exactly what this fund is actually paying out in its distributions. As we can see, so far there's not a lot of distributions. It's paid monthly. It paid in June and July. Now, roughly the same amount, nothing too crazy. So what we're going to do, we're going to do some rough math. Like I said, we're going to add these two numbers together And this is going to tell us, we're going to get a rough estimate of the actual dividend yield. It's so hard for me to talk and type this at the same time. We're going to take this, and then we have 2, so we're going to multiply it by 6 to get 12, which gives us 1552. Our current price is 1537, so this is relatively accurate based off what it's been paying so far. And we'll figure this out by dividing it by the current price of the shares, which gives us and then we're going to actually multiply this by 100. So we have a 101% distribution rate, which is insane. I hope you guys, I hope I didn't do math too quickly for you. The math is pretty simple. I recommend doing it on your own for all types of investments just to check. But again, this is a crazy assumption because we don't know if YBIT is going to continue to pay out this amount in distributions. It could drop by half, which would still be a 50% yield, but still it could drop. We don't know where the price is going to go. We could have NAV erosion over time, which we've seen with some of the YieldMax funds. So it is important to note. Now, Seeking Alpha, which I use for all of my dividend stuff, they have their yield being super low because it hasn't had a full year of dividends, which someone pointed out in the comments, which I really appreciate, that Seeking Alpha waits for a full year to give the true accurate dividend yield. But still, it's a very interesting fund. What we're going to do now, we're going to do the final calculation and see how much money. I'm going to base it off of their calculation of the dividend, not mine. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. The first year is always relatively simple to calculate. We'll know with a near 100% rate, we're going to double our money the first year. So the dividends are going to be $9,528 with a total return of $9,528. Total money is nearly $20,000. Now, I want to note that this is an insane speculation. I've had some comments recently saying it's crazy to speculate for 30 years, and it is. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is if this fund is able to return at these rates for this period of time, it would be crazy. We're not calculating in any sort of NAV erosion, which is very, like I said, very common with the YieldMax funds, and we're not also calculating in any price appreciation that we have seen with some of these funds. So it is really important to understand what this is and what this number means. And these numbers are going to be insane because we've seen a 100% return rate on the channel before from like CONY and MSTY, our videos on those. So it's going to be pretty crazy. And again, this is by no means saying it's going to do this much in this many years. It's just a speculation based off how crazy the return rate is on the distributions right now. So that being said, we go to 5 years, and now every single year in dividends, you are making $138,000. So you can see quickly how this seems very, very, very unlikely. And it is. I will say that it is. So then we jump it up to 10 years, and this gives us, after 10 years, you are now making, wow, $3.4 million. On these kind of videos, I always get messed up because there's no commas. Yeah, 3.9 million. I misspoke. 3.9 million every single year from dividends after investing $10,000, which is insane. I'm sure 15 is going to be even more insane because we're compounding. So this also does show the power of compounding at this return rate. So now we are making $111 million every single year. Every single year. And your total return is $230 million. At 20 years, we are now making, this has got to be into the billions by now. Yes, $3.17 billion, and our total return is $6.5 billion. So we'll finish it off. Let's say you are 25 years old and you want to retire at 65. So you invest $10,000 into YBIT right now, and it holds this return rate, and it holds its price value. The NAV does not erode. After 30 years, you would be able to retire, pull this money out of a retirement exempt account like an IRA or even a 401k, and you would be making $2.55 trillion a year in dividends. Quite an insane number. And your total, 1, 2, 3, is $52 trillion made. So, I mean, that's the thing is this possible to make you $52 trillion after 30 years? Extremely unlikely. I mean, think of how much money that would be, the GDP of numerous small countries combined. But still, it is fun to imagine and see what these funds are possible. Again, there's so many new ETFs coming out. I have like 6 other videos lined up on different high-yielding dividend ETFs and some dividend stocks as well. So if you guys like this content, I appreciate it. If you can show some support to the channel by just liking the video, that's all I ask. You guys watching the video already helps me out a bunch, and I do hope you get some value from it. So if you did, yeah, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.